Hello, my name is John Gann, and I'm president of ICCF. Thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces out here in the crowd, and I'd like to specifically thank our partners, Global Environment Facility and USAID, in co-sponsoring this event with us. You know, we're here tonight because we cannot overemphasize the importance of putting a stop to the illegal wildlife trafficking. This is truly a crisis, and it's past time that we treated it like one. There's a lot of money being committed, some of it starting to be used, money from donor country taxpayers through bilaterals and multilaterals, mostly through, right now, USAID and the Global Environment Facility, but also from the European Union soon. We feel that the true limiting factor right now is good governance. And we must have strong and proactive political leadership on the ground in the source countries and demand countries so that these funds can be scaled and used as effectively as possible. We must have engagement at the highest level, and tonight we have several heads of state here from Africa to talk about their efforts and what they need more in support from us to do their job. And we'll also hear some very brief remarks from the leading donor agencies and implementers. I really would like to especially recognize a few people here. First, good friend Ian Somerhalder and his wife Nikki, UNEP Goodwill Ambassadors. George O'Neill, a longtime friend. Of our partners here, and I think this is very important, our founding partner here, Wildlife Conservation Society, with their CEO, Christian Samper, and John Calvelli, who's right there, who's leading the efforts for them in wildlife trafficking, have been doing an absolutely fantastic job on the ground, as well as other great partners that we have, such as African Parks. Ron Ulrich, I know you're here representing African Parks as chairman. Rainforest Alliance through Ana Paula Traveras, who's just taken over as president. I can't thank enough to Patrick Bergen and the African Wildlife Foundation, is doing great work on the ground and a very committed partner. Vance Martin, who's president of WILD. Radha Muthea, who's head of the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves. Dr. Lori Marker from the Cheetah Conservation Fund. And we are also happy to have Alana Feld and Tom Albert. Alana Feld of Feld Entertainment, which does enormous work in conservation in Africa. There's also some people here that normally don't get named, but really are the reason why things are able to get done. That's Paul Harrison from UNDP, Nick Saccharon from UNDP, Richard Ruggiero from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Cynthia Gill and Mary Rowan from USAID, Valerie Hickey and Claudia Sobervilla from the World Bank, and it's great to have them here. Last group I'd like to mention, a little bit far from this crisis in Colombia, but we've been very engaged in Colombia for a long time, and they've just shown such incredible leadership on issues such as water and forest, and that's our members of our Colombian Conservation Caucus who are here today. And those are Herman Blanco, Senator Juan Diego Gomez, Mauricio Gomez, Jack Husney, Sandra Ortiz, and Milton Rodriguez. So thank you to all. That's all I'm saying, so let's get this program running. And someone turn on the air conditioning, please. If I'm hot, you guys have got to be very hot too. So we'd like to begin the evening by premiering a special video clip from National Geographic Explorer Series Warlords of Ivory episode. And this is being put together by Brian Christie, a longtime supporter with National Geographic, who's now running their new Special Investigations Unit on wildlife crime. So cue video and roll.
We're on patrol in an area north of the Garamba River. You can see in the face of the guards that this is real. Just trying to do my best not to get that.
Wow. Now I'd like to, and there is a door prize for the speaker who speaks the fewest words tonight. So I'm winning that, I think, right now. That be said, I'd like to introduce Naoko Ishii, who's chairperson and CEO of the Global Environment Facility, which is the largest multilateral funder of grants to protect the environment with $13.5 billion in grants and $57 billion in co-financing, and I think only 70 employees. It's fantastic. It's pretty amazing.
Excellencies, the Presidents of Tanzania, Malawi, Gabon, Nambia, Bosnia, Kenya and Senegal, the ministers, the friends from the conservation community, my dearest friend Helen Clark. Where's she? Very good evening to everyone. I just would like to first congratulate David Wallon and the ICCF, not only for hosting this wonderful, fantastic event, but also, more importantly, their very, very important, excellent work to secure the very broad political support or the backing for stronger conservation. They are really working very hard to strengthen the policy and actions all over the world. I just want to recognize how special their model is. Second, and of course, I would like to congratulate and pay the fullest respect to the presidents and the heads of the state, because you are the forefront of this battle, fierce battle to fight against the illegal trafficking. This week, the SDGs are just approved, and that one novelty of this SDG is they clearly recognize this earth has a finite environmental resources, and if we lose those resources, they will not come back. And the wildlife is the case in point. Every day, the rhinos and elephant and the core key iconic species are being killed because of human greedies. So that you have been really dedicating a lot of effort to save the global heritage. So we really do have a fullest respect to your work. In order to respond and to support your effort, the GEF has just launched a program together with the World Bank, UNDP, and other conservation community. This project has just 3 components: to work with you countries to protect the national park. Second, to work the demand side of particularly Asian countries to control the demand. And third, to control the traffic, the trade side. So we are doing this together with many partners, because otherwise we would not be able to achieve that result. So again, we are really excited to work all of you and to strengthen and join our hands to save our planet for the future generation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite the former Prime Minister of New Zealand and the head of the United Nations Development Program, Helen Clark.
I want to especially acknowledge tonight the heads of state and government from the 5 countries who are with us, because they are truly from frontline states in a war against a vile trade, poaching, and illicit trade in wildlife products. And as you saw from the video, it can get pretty warlike out there in that trade. The good news is that our leaders are leading. The good news is that there is an international consensus around the approach. And the approach is not any one thing, it's a mix of things. It's how you get legal livelihoods for people who might otherwise be involved in poaching. It's about how you involve the community in the wildlife resource. It's about supporting the governments to govern and the law institutions to work. And it's also about raising awareness in the countries receiving these products that this is the wrong thing to do and they should act as well. More good news, the General Assembly has passed the first ever resolution about this crime. Second good news, 2 Sustainable Development Goals launched over the weekend prioritise wildlife conservation. So we've got the resolutions, we've got the leaders who are leading on these issues, we've got an international consensus around the approach. And from the bottom of my heart, I appeal to everybody who has the capacity to advocate for supporting these countries to do so. Your UN system's committed. We couldn't do our job without Naoko Ishii and the tremendous support that we have from the Global Environment Facility. But please listen to these leaders, hear what they're up against, and really support them, because they're trying to support the wildlife of their countries. Thank you very much.
I'd like to introduce you now to Eric Postel of USAID, Associate Director.
Good evening, Your Excellencies, ministers, guests. Also, I'd like to recognize the members of Congress who are here because they and their constituents are the ones who are supporting our work. I'll keep it very brief also because we're looking forward to hearing from the heads of state, and I know many people want to have conversations. I have just a couple of very simple messages. First, I want, SDG 17 is about partnerships, and as we saw on the screen, this challenge requires partnerships and all of us working together. For the United States part, President Obama has made very clear his commitment on this subject. He's directed all of us across our entire government to work with all of you, whether it's NGOs, heads of state, ministers, to work on all aspects of this. So we are, of course, working to support many countries which have resources to conserve and incredible flora and fauna. But we've been increasing that, and we've been getting results. We hear about the many problems, but I wouldn't want anybody to give up or not think that we can make progress, because there are cases in parts of Namibia and parts of the DRC and Nepal. There have been successes. The second thing is that we are also working very hard, both with funds to educate people and diplomatically with the demand side in Asia. We've already, through our programs, reached out to more than 700 million people in Asia to try to drive home the messages that this really makes no sense and that they are a big part of the solution. And lastly, we're trying to get new innovation. So we're working with so many different people here in the room, new ideas. As Brian's investigation showed, where he used RFID chips and many things, we need as much innovation in this space as possible. So know that we are standing alongside all of you, all those brave park rangers and everybody doing so much to move this agenda forward and try to stop this terrible scourge. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Eric. And one of the Jeff's implementing partners, Ibrahim Tia, who is running this program for the United Nations Environment Program.
Thank you. 30,000 elephants, 9,000 increase of poaching of rhinos in South Africa, one of the best equipped countries in Africa. Thousands of people being affected, hundreds of guards being killed. Yes, the statistics are stark, but there are solutions. Last night, 2 young women who had never set foot outside of their native South Africa were honored by the United Nations Environment Program as champions of the earth, along with the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, the CEOs of Unilever, Natura, and National Geographic Society. These 2 young women said, we don't want to be bored home. We cannot let our communities being affected by by bands of criminals that are coming to kill our animals. But illegal trafficking, unlike drug trafficking, is actually robbing communities from resources that otherwise would have been used to build schools or to create jobs. And we can't do something about it. I salute the President of the world, of the leaders here, and salute the members of Congress and everybody here. We can't do something about it. Let's do it.
And the last implementing partner, Paula Caballero from the World Bank.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, we honor you tonight for your commitment, because it is only with leadership and vision that we're going to tackle this. I am Colombian, so I also know what is behind this. It's organized crime. But the problem with organized crime is that it corrupts societies and it takes generations to overcome. So this is not just about the animals, it's also about the very fabric of society. It is also about the livelihoods of people. So I appeal to all of you. I echo those Helen, Naoko's, and Ibrahim's pleas. that we really take this not simply as an animal issue, which it is, it's global public goods, it is the future, it is the world we want to leave to our children, but that we also frame this as what it is, a governance crisis, an international crisis that is fueling trends, that is fueling processes that undermine the fabric of what we as a global society are trying to construct. As we launch the SDGs, this has to be at the forefront. Let's make anti-poaching, let's make the work of the rangers a forefront, a cornerstone of the SDGs. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce a very good friend to ICCF and to conservation, President Kikwete of Tanzania.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you, David. Excellencies, heads of state and government, congressmen, friends. Well, as John said, I'm not new to ICCF. I've been attending several of their events. But to me, this one is special because 4 weeks from now, I'll not be president. I'll be completing my term of office. We have elections on the 25th of October. And therefore, this could be my last event with ICCF as president of my country. But whatever else, I'll continue to be involved in conservation. So whatever way we can work together, certainly I'll see you. Well, ICCF has been an important partner of ours, an inspiration, big supporter of our efforts to conserve nature, wildlife, and forest. Conservation of nature, forest, and wildlife is an important matter to my country. 35% of our territory has been set aside for conservation, forest, and wildlife. But we've been facing challenges. At independence, the elephant population was estimated to be 350,000. And the madness set in the late 1970s, 1980s. The population declined to 50,000 by 1989. And the government had to intervene in a big way. We had to bring in the military to help. We dealt with poaching, and then the numbers began to build up. Come 2009, the numbers reached 110,000. And then a new wave of madness, a very intense one. The illegal ivory trade had intensified to the extent that by the time we did the last census, that population had gone down to 43,000. Of course, we had to bring in the military again. We were able at least to stem the tide. So we are seeing some recovery. In the northern sector, for those of you who know Tanzania, the northern tourist sector, we're talking of the Tarangire National Park, we have Lake Manyara, Ngorongoro, and the Serengeti. We are seeing stabilization of the elephant population. In fact, the numbers have increased. We've been asking how come that at least the numbers have almost doubled in the Serengeti. But it thanks to the efforts of conservation. That elephants from other places, we are told, including across the border, find it safer in the Serengeti than other places. We still have problems in the southern sector, because the Selous has been the game reserve that had the largest concentration of elephants in the country. And then Selous Ruaha ecosystem, that's where there's been a lot of intensified poaching. I remember there was a time there was a cage in Colombo, Sri Lanka, of ivory. A professor from Seattle University did the DNA sampling of that ivory. They discovered that ivory originated from the Ruaha, Selous ecosystem. But interestingly, this cargo was shipped out of Kampala through the port of Mombasa and apprehended in Colombo. There was a time there was a cargo that passed through Dar es Salaam, caught somewhere. It had pink ivory. And Tanzania does not have the pink ivory. It could have come from Gabon. I don't know. My brother here is the one who has elephants with pink ivory. So what the point I'm saying is, it's a huge network. It's a huge network, international network, paying the people to poach, bringing the guns. I remember the efforts that were done in the northern sector. The people are importing guns from Europe. The 360, what are the rifles they call them? 360
Magnum.
360 Magnum. They're imported from Europe. There are networks in Europe that are sending the guns. There are people who are receiving the guns. There are people who are distributing the guns. There are people they pay in the villages. Their task is just to spot the elephant. And then the shooters come. They just kill the elephant. And there are those who are only taking out the ivory, cut them into pieces, small pieces, take them away using motorbikes. And this is where there are so many motorbikes. So it's an elaborate network. But the point I'm saying, internally, we are building capacities. We have our own limitations in terms of resources. So when I heard Madame there has 13.2 billion, who is spending that 13.2 billion? We need this money for conservation, and you say you brag you have 13.2 billion. Give us the money.
Show me the money.
Yes. So that's one. Of course, we have, but we've been recruiting, training our people, working with friends to train our game rangers. That's our part of the bargain. We are improving on surveillance at the ports, the exit points, with scanners, so to be able to detect the ivory as it leaves. But all this hustle can stop. And how can it stop? Close the markets. If you can close the markets for ivory, if you can close the markets for rhinoceros horns, there'll be no demand. The elephants will be safe. The rhinos will be safe. The markets, you know them. You are more powerful to deal with the markets than us. We are the weakest link. So our appeal has always been, those of you who have the power to prevail over the market, play your part of the bargain. If you do it effectively, the elephants will be safe. And every survey we do, we'll always see the numbers coming up, increasing. So my message to you, ICCF, help close the markets. There's going to be no problem. Thank you.
Now I'd like to, everybody, to be the first to know here, our 2016 Teddy Roosevelt Award winner at our gala coming up next year is going to be President Bongo, so we're going to be very excited to give him that award in Washington in front of the U.S. Congress. But we have President Bongo with us right now from Gabon, and thank you so much for coming.
Your Excellencies, my dear colleagues, members of Congress, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is a real pleasure to be here with you tonight to celebrate the adoption of our United Nations General Assembly resolution against wildlife crime. The elephant is perhaps Africa's most widely recognized symbol. Tragically, just in 10 years, we have lost as many as 70% of the forest elephant of Central Africa. Yes, 70%. Today, my country, Gabon, which has only over 10% of Africa rainforest, is home to over 50% of the surviving forest elephants. Across Africa, we've lost hundreds of wildlife staff killed in the line of duty by the poachers. Our biologists and rangers are becoming policemen and are engaging in an armed combat to save our natural heritage. The ivory smugglers also traffic drugs, arms, and humans. And in some instances, rebel and terrorist groups use ivory and rhino horn to finance insurrection. And as we've seen in Central African Republic, when the poachers become rebels, they can destabilize an entire nation. I've had to deploy the military to support the rangers from our National Parks Agency, unable to cope with increasingly organized and violent, poachers. A month ago, I signed a new penal code that criminalizes ivory trafficking and other wildlife offenses, raising the minimum penalty to 4 years in prison. And when there is proof or organized or transnational crime, the minimum penalty will be 10 years in prison. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa without its elephant would be a sadly diminished place. The same could be said of this bipartisan gathering. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank the United States for the support, the encouragement you are providing for our efforts to sustainably manage and protect our natural resources. It is no secret that when our good friend David Barron introduced Mike Fay to my father, and that my father saw Nick Nichols' sumptuous images of the natural treasures of Gabon, for the first time, he was then inspired to create a network of 13 national parks covering 11% of the country. As described on the ICCF website, Mike Fay's mega transect was also the inspiration for the creation of ICCF. And as such, it gives me a particular pleasure tonight to announce our intention to form a partner caucus in Gabon's Parliament and Senate with the intention of building on the experience of similar initiatives elsewhere in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, most recently, I joined Mike Fay and Lee White and the National Geographic's Pristine Seas team on Ted Waite's marine research and exploration boat. They showed me images of a startling underwater treasure, a treasure trove of brightly colored biodiversity and an impressive school of large fish. However, they also painted a picture of illegal fishing, out of control, undertaken by pirate boats and condoned by corrupt government officials. The following week, Mike and Lee were in a cabinet meeting describing a vision for Blue Gabon to transform a fishery on the verge of total collapse into a model of sustainable management. The concept was simple: eliminate corruption and initiate a surveillance system to police strengthen legislation, create a network of marine protected areas to protect key breeding grounds and sensitive ecosystems, and develop management plans for sustainable fisheries. I expect to create a marine protected area network covering around 25% of our EEZ before the end of this year. I'd like to point out that the Secretary of Navy, Ray Mabus, has been tireless in his support for development of marine surveillance strategy. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has developed a strong partnership with our National Parks Agency, providing technical assistance as well as coordinating financial support for the parks and for fishery management and marine protected areas. Over a century after President Theodore Roosevelt's visionary actions in favor of parks and sustainable management of natural resources in the U.S., it is interesting to think that in many African countries, we face surprisingly similar challenges to those faced by President Roosevelt. I hope that Teddy Roosevelt, who was himself a passionate Africa explorer in his own right, would be proud to see American people standing by our side as we battle to protect our parks and natural icons and work to develop a model for sustainable development. Once again, dear friend, your support and your help will definitely make a difference and provide us, with the assistance and support to save the African elephant and rhinoceros. For that, from the bottom of our heart, we'd like to thank you very much. Thank you.
And our last speaker this evening, a very good friend of ICCF, who is just with us in Washington, talking before the U.S. Congress, and who also just officially launched the Conservation Caucus in the Malawi Parliament, the President of Malawi. Thank you so much.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Malawi is a peaceful nation for its friendly people and rich natural heritage. Visitors flock from around the world to see our lakes, mountains, national parks that presently teem with wildlife. This may not be the case in 20 years' time from now, because the two of Africa's iconic species, the elephant and the rhino, may well be seen only in history books. Malawi's elephant population has halved since 1980s, and are just a handful of rhinos. Malawi's trade routes are being exploited by traffickers, bringing ivory from neighboring countries, and this in itself is a threat to regional elephant populations. Despite the limited resources, my government is stepping up the fight against poaching and illegal wildlife trade. I'm aware that failure to successfully combat these evils will be catastrophic consequences not on tourism and the economy, but also on biodiversity, which will in turn impact negatively on agriculture and human life. My government remains committed to provisions of the Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species sites, which include a ban on any international trade in ivory. We have pledged our international cooperation to combat illegal wildlife trade through several declarations, like the London Arusha Declarations 2014, the Kasane Statement 2015, and the Elephant Protection Initiative, EPI. My government has just completed an assessment of illegal wildlife trade. The Wildlife Policy and the Wildlife Act are currently under review. We have set up a special committee to combat wildlife crime, and we are training frontline staff, judiciary, police, and council officers. And we're introducing sniffer dogs at all entry-exit points in order to combat this evil. Just last August, my government established the Malawi Parliamentary Caucus with the support of the ICCF. Despite our best efforts, this is a battle that we cannot win alone. I'm aware that the international community, the World Bank, CF, UNDP, and others already assist my government in the fight against wildlife crime. I call upon others to join us in our fight, protect Malawi's wildlife, because we alone don't have the capacity to do the entire work. And no doubt, 6 main African nations facing the same challenges. This is a global problem requiring global response. Finally, let me thank the International Caucus for organizing this wonderful event and also for the interest in the conservation that you are showing in Malawi in particular, but also in Africa in general. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
I was just sent up here by John Gant to be told that I'm not John Gant, but I was sent up here to just leave you with some uplifting remarks. You know, I think it's one thing that's consistent here is that we're all hearing that there is not a developing problem, there is a very existing problem within the African continent of illegal trade. It's funding terrorism, it's creating the loss of biodiversity, and an enormous amount of other issues. I will say this, I don't come to you as a political leader, I don't come to you as a professor or a head of state, but I will say, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, if we want to stop this problem, we have to look very deeply within ourselves and ask, how far are we willing to go? So I will say this, I am committed to you because I come to you as an entertainer. So all I have is the ability to speak to people, to massive amounts of people. I talk to about 300 million people a month. If that doesn't get you to quiet down, I don't know what will. That's about the size of the United States of America. Every 30 days I talk to. I hear you, I feel you, I'm committed to making sure that when the buying stops, the killing will stop. I appreciate your remarks, but this is not just a doom and gloom situation. There is help on the way. And if we want to look to where we need to fix our problems, the largest untapped natural resource in the world we have are our youth. I leave you with that. I beg you to educate them to be compassionate, reverent, grateful, and intelligent human beings. Thank you all so much for your time and energy. Thank you, John Gant.
Thank you, Ian Somerhalder.
Thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you all.